Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ricardo Maldonado, Managing Director of the 92nd Street Wise Unterberg Poetry Center, and it's my privilege to welcome those here and those watching at home to tonight's reading by the winners of our 2020 and 2021 Discovery Contest. Timothy Donnelly will be joining me in a bit to read brief introductions. Before we begin, I'd like to announce our judges for next year's contest: Timothy Donnelly, Sumita Chakraborty, Victoria Chang, Brian Tier, and Philip B. Williams. We dedicate this reading to the memory of Joan Jacobson, patron saint of the celebration of emerging voices. I also want to acknowledge our judges and my colleague, Sophie Heron. It was roughly a year and a half ago when we met over the phone and then on Zoom this past May to make sense of our failing world as thousands of emerging poets sought to question it. And in the work, we saw the makings of a new future that's possible and braver, therefore beautiful. May it come to us. When they take the stage, our 8 poets become part of a tradition now some 7 decades in the making. Other poets who have been discovered include Lucille Clifton, Mark Strand, Solmaz Sharif, Mary Jo Bang, Larry Levis, Eduardo Corral, Reginald Shepard, Ellen Bryant Voigt, and Brigit Pegeen Kelly, among others. Our 2020 class, Asa Drake, Luther Hughes, Anna Portnoy Brimmer, and Daniella Toosie-Watson will read work before Timothy joins us to introduce the 2021 winners. Then they read. About the work itself, Drake's poem Spell as devotional exercise, how we may look beyond historical affect, how we may find each other, and how that reading of us may incorporate itself in us, leaving an impression long after time passes. Portnoy Brimmer gathers the devastating impact of American neglect, questioning accepted definitions of collectivity while staking a claim for joy in Puerto Ricanidad as a site of future memory. Hughes' poems sense in touch or relapse into each other away beyond our own mysteries, a tenderness with which we can find an emergent value that we must keep, one we must want to know. Toosie-Watson's poems make an argument for a series of small miracles. It is said every broken heart must expand, and when it grows, we find life and color, una nueva vida en el baile, and a new kind of regard for ourselves and what's at hand. Please join me in welcoming our readers.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you all for being here today. You're the first audience for these poems. Disagreeable aspects of hyphenation. Driving through the South wearing my mother's clothes versus someone who visits like they don't know how to approach a wasp nest. A coworker explains there's nothing special about the food I grew up with. I had invited her into my home. I had picked fruit from my own yard, food I'd grown because it was impossible to buy. She had packed a to-go plate for her husband. That's when she told me, leaving, there's nothing special about the food you grew up with. I forget to protect my teeth, and now I find crazed lines in the enamel. The webinar trainer asks that I practice. What are you going to say? It is so easy to know how another will root out my provenance, less to understand what I want from this conversation I don't want. I don't know. To protect my teeth, I put my tongue between the bite. I don't think the dead are waiting for us to do anything in particular. It's been 24 years and I still carry a nest of small animals. This year's is the first that survives, something I've touched that lives. So this is the least of my sins. Remember, America is only one possibility. Online, the silk advertises I can sleep anywhere and shows me bodies asleep in the desert. Here, the snakes don't bite. They wrap around me under a silk gown and keep their mouths closed. Keeping our mouths closed keeps us warm. We're in this together, dreaming a man, not the lover, gets too close, so close we all open our mouths. Who's happier than Medusa? I think I hear my lover, but I've misheard him, he was cutting her up. Who's halved more than Medusa? I can't say. There are a million things you can have in the world, a million you can't. I worry my mother will die and I will know nothing. Hi, Mom. Sometimes history is too beautiful to be believed. Until dinner time, my grandmother sold gardenias wrapped in banana leaves. Then she found better ways to earn a living. Years later, at an American restaurant, I'm mistaken for a waitress wearing all my silk, an accident I knew in my body, like the pride I felt when my adult mother said I have narrow feet. Mother warns me, nothing will change. I'm alive and you don't know anything. It was winter when my mother spoke, apples rolling in the back seat, the fragrance shifting off-site under the great deterrent of rain. It's still winter, with a brown leaf staining my work slacks. I smell the tea leaves working up spring, or the luxury of that kind of thinking in January, when I explained to another that my lunch wasn't useful. All my life, I've wanted to lay with my stomach to the grass. I've wanted to eat from community gardens. I wrote a lie I'll admit now. I didn't eat the municipal fruit. I bought the Cosmic Crisp over the Honey Crisp for $1 surcharge because I wanted extra shelf life. The last day of the week, I split the apple to decide if it's for sharing or eating whole. It's a luxury to have your hunger. I'm sure I don't need to go back, but can we go back to the restaurant? I am laughing with the woman at the table next to mine about the woman who would have me serve while I celebrate. She was going to eat 1 dish and I've ordered 5. You know, I'll still leave hungry because I don't tell you what I eat. See the phoenix with its mouth and feet grasping for 2 servings. I am where I come from. Yonder, light breaks the window. You don't recognize light as a hard hitter. Moonlight moonlighting as meteorite. Curtain rod come loose, cabinet collapsed at dawn. A sign you must go out into the world, received by the reproduction of gardenias and orange blossoms hungry for visitors. Love bends the balcony with water weight. Once, a neighbor cried out for help, collapsed under the collapsed trellis of passion flowers. Maybe the best omen for moderation is the thing we love pinning us down. I check the value of my house on Zillow. My house moonlights as a more expensive house online. Even the comfort of numbers scares me. Then there's the comfort that the end of us isn't the same as the end altogether. Now versus when lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed. Tonight, my mother leaves a voicemail asking I work back of house when I can. I haven't had a parent called afraid for my safety since 9/11. Close to where I live, a couple books a hotel, purchases paramilitary gear, pays off a credit card, in order to hinder my life. Who has a good way to respond? I'm going to distract you. Nane calls on Monday night to try out her new tablet. She alternates between I'm beautiful and you're beautiful, beauty meaning a pair. We admit to gaining weight, and Ate Bernie congratulates my well-attended Zoom meeting. Lots of repetition. Nane wants to show that her hair is all white. I've yet to find a term for self-reference that does not equate to ornament. Someone I know mispronounces my name, worse, someone who would like to know me. Be good and kind, they say, or else. But I am not good or kind, or else I would not look for retribution, cardinals and squirrels before summer when I don't want to be responsible for their nest. On a podcast, a poet I love names the many accountability groups she's joined this year, and I am jealous of her self-discipline, and the word accountability used as a term of self-discipline, but that is not what I want. Foremost sin in my mind, the one not worth confessing. Beloved, if it is the year of the comet, do not look for the comet. I stay so long in one place my hair lines the nest. The young blue jays are gray and flightless and want to know me. I don't know how to hold down what I love, but I've eaten so much fruit trying to lure the animal to me. 31, I go to the grocery store. 2 men open the door for me. I cannot stop them. I want to love those who gather around my efforts, offer care in its multiplicity. At checkout, the cashier asks if I found everything I wanted. I say almost. Then she pulls out the list. Rice flours, plantain. Then she asks, have you tried Amazon? Is have you tried Amazon the new we don't serve? Here, the world begs for transcription. Most of all, I want to be accurate, but I would like to use less effort, product of empire as I am. I know very little about forgiveness. I'm gleeful for anything I can allow myself to scorn without consequence. I want to be as good as they imagine, displace the Southerner as his own child, un-American as they come, because I'm told union was never the goal. And I've got one last one. Dreamscape dressed in my younger self. First, you have a dress of gold, but you can't wear it. The gold dress cannot be washed or dry cleaned. Hell, the tag says no spot cleaning. So you have a dress of gold just in case. Then a field of red sorrel in rows like someone loves it. Then a pine wood forest with a dogwood floor. Next, the Perseids behind sheet lining. Next year, fruit from your own cuttings. Slice me fruit from the year I have yet to grow. I couldn't slice a pomegranate with less than 6 cuts. Once you learn there's only one way to prepare the pip star in each soft pear. I have seen illustrations, and I have been scolded by so many women for making indefensible halves at their pie tables. Now, remember that dress we're saving. You try it on. Thank you.
Boy Revisited. You Google Tamir Rice. Google says, people also ask, who killed John Crawford? Where was Michael Brown shot in Ferguson, Missouri? When was Jamar Clark shot? Who is Oscar Grant? Who are the officers involved in the Freddie Gray case? You take a picture of your face. You sleep recklessly. The church prays for your deliverance. You turn the corner like any maggot turns in the graveyard. You're only a matter of time. Who killed Luther Hughes? Where was Luther Hughes shot in Seattle, Washington? When was Luther Hughes shot? Who is Luther Hughes? Who are the officers involved in the Luther Hughes case? The hole in your head is like any old hole you tell yourself. A man slides in. Any old hole you remember. You watch the news, you tweet. Your cell phone dies before you can send the picture. You whisper in his ear, you're not like them other niggas, you're alive. You're not like Tamir, or John, or Michael, or Jamar, or Oscar, or Freddie. Look how God shows you his grace when you breathe, heave when being run through. You count to 3 before clicking the article. Tamir Rice shooting. A breakdown of the event that led to the 12-year-old's death. A video. Tamir. Police car. Policemen. Guns pulled. Altercation. Gunshot. Dead. All heavens are for black boys. All will be heaven for black boys. Black boy heaven for all black heaven. Will the black boy go? Will he heaven? Will heaven be a black boy? Boy, be black in heaven. All boys that are black will heaven. Heaven be black for all black boys. Let heaven be in every black boy. Black boys take heaven wherever they go. Wherever you go is black heaven. Heaven goes wherever you heaven. You go to heaven, black boy. All your black boys will heaven. All black boys, one heaven. All boys black for heaven. For heaven, a will for boys. A will for boys is heaven. It's the middle of death season. You live with dead bodies because you keep Googling them. You take turns with yourself. Imagine what coffin they'll lay you in. Maybe mahogany, marble. You think love couples with violence. You visit a clinic to get rid of yourself. Before doctors, you had nothing but a history of names. Now you can add yourself, you think. A testament. Just this one pill, this one time. It's not the end for you. Swear it. Hey, y'all. How y'all doing? I'm so happy to be here. But I'm gonna keep going anyway. It is February. Some odd stream of oak trees line the sidewalk like a phrase that never leaves the mind. I love you, or I have love for you. He kissed me this morning beneath the gray quilts of late winter like he loves me, and there's a difference in the work of nature today. Sometimes difference is simple, but today there's a woman at the bus stop screaming, I hate you, you fucking nigger. I watch as sunlight crumbles against Lake Washington, watch a bird that appears at first to be a raven, but with a subtle twitch of its blouse wing turns crow as it lands next to a puddle of trash. Is the woman angry or frustrated? There's a freckling of pigeons, tired of the leftover Starbucks. There's a man grabbing another, looking at me as if I were a forest to be lost in. There's always a way hunger declares itself. Is that what it means to be black in Seattle? Standing here admiring the riding moan of car horns as if nothing were happening? The white man next to me looks at me and shakes his head, mouth shedding a smirk. A police car sirens a group of women not to cross, loud, red foul. If you're wondering, the woman is black. Does that make a difference? On my phone, I read a caption that says, missed 2, but got 4. Next time they won't be so lucky, referencing 4 birds, each shot in the head or the unseemly breast. Does knowing the birds are American crows make a difference? There's smoke climbing out the sewer. There's a child laughing or crying. In the article beneath the picture, 14-year-old George Steiny Jr. is killed by electric chair for being accused of murdering 2 white girls. His blackness is never mentioned. This matters. It matters more than the shot crows, more than the woman who by now is so quiet, a city of her own. As I get on the bus, I wonder if she has a son. I want a son, which might be weird given I am newly in love, given that we are black. Isn't it irresponsible to raise a child in this city of Mammoth Hills and Mount Rainier teething away at the sky? I think I will die before I get the privilege. Sometimes I slush through this city and feel like I have died already. I got 2 more left. Y'all doing okay still? Good. I'm doing fantastic. Cool. Stay safe. The dog outside won't stop swallowing the city with its harping. Sooner or later, some good citizen will peek through their blinds asking themselves about the fuss, wanting to know what cruel somebody abandoned such loyalty, some golden retriever, some snip-tailed Rottweiler. Who knows? Next to me, he is asleep, the one I love, the one who promised me a dog in the long seasons to come. He says, when the sun is at its most weary, when the sky collapses into the cascades, when the wounds of autumn vanish into miles of snowy flesh, then. The truth is, who knows what will happen to either of us? We are always one bullet away from the graveyard or murder of memorial hymns. And if that's the room we've been born into, then why do the sparrows break the morning with song? Why do the fir trees fight bark and roots for their green? Sometimes I hear the earth's sunken voice saying, "Come home, come home." And who am I to argue with the one who has given us so much? But dear, eager earth, I want him to live forever. I want the dog outside to have met my dead dog. I hardly think of him, of how our neighbors shouted at us to shut him up. One day, they did it for us, poured searing water onto his body. The grass around him became shredded hairs, the flies fevered and worried. I watched what happened to an animal unwelcomed, undeserved. When I tell him this as he armors himself for the day, he says that will never happen again, and oh, to be as certain as wind. Not true, I want to say, but I can't have everything. I can't have the yellow from the small patch of dandelions, can't have the echo of laughter rolling over rooftops, over the hush of engines and bicycle bells, can't bring the dead back to life. We won't live forever, but I'm afraid some wrong citizen will mistake him for a scar on the neighborhood. They will take him from me. I settle with a covering spell. Stay safe. He walks out the door and into a spray of sirens. My last poem, this poem is also in your program, if you want to follow along and be cute that way. Thanks again for having me, y'all. Near Sacrament. Sometimes it is a dream, the robin's slick song paring back the morning. It is not morning, or it is not like how morning comes, as if water from a glass tipped over, but it is how I loved you, gradually and then all at once. Cherry plum trees settling into their blush, hills of sodden wheat, this golden field I can't stop returning to, you naked inching towards me, an adaptation of tenderness and force, brief lights that fall gently from your hands. If only the landscape were that simple. Pollen in the air, each breath leaving the mouth like a man pushed from a building. No, he leapt. To what do I owe your beauty, to which I never fully required, and yet, while beneath you is what bloomed. This is how I began, as dirt and desire, or simply a small river, aimless but moving. To where? Thank you.
Buenas noches a todos. Can folks hear me okay? Okay, cool. I'm not quite comfortable taking my mask off yet, so I'm going to keep it on. Bear with me. I just quickly wanted to say I'm really grateful to be here with this brilliant cohort of poets and thank Ricky, Sophie, Bernard, and the 92nd Street Y team for bringing us together. And also just quickly acknowledge that back home in Puerto Rico, a lot of sectors of the society are mobilizing against yet another debt restructuring plan, draconian debt restructuring plan. And adjacent violences that we can't seem to get past. And I just really hope these poems at some point are no longer representative of our reality and just pass on to be a part of our historic memory. So I am going to start with a poem entitled Educación, and it is inspired by and after a poet and dear friend and comrade who's in the audience called Larco Mura. It's called Educación. Always swim towards an oncoming wave, then dive. Never swim against the current. Let it hurl you out to sea, then wade back ashore. The shore is lined with sargassum and sea grape, not littered. Don't litter the sand that straddles a leatherback's young. Leatherbacks leave for ocean and migrate years before returning. Returning will die on the airport runway, buried inside your ribcage. Your ribcage will resprout with return through graveyard soil. Keep mice away from the soil you pile into pots of ají and white oregano. A good pot of white rice colors your lips with oil. Pour oil into the pot to pave it with pegao. Don't throw away pegao, the scraping hides resistance. Cats will hide hours before a hurricane. The eye of a hurricane opens the eyes of a people. The eyes of a people can grow clouded with Saharan dust. Saharan dust crosses the Atlantic, storms through windows of foreclosed homes. To occupy a foreclosed building is to step on a police anthill. The police will tear gas you because you fight for education. The police will tear gas you because you fight. The police will tear gas you. Tear gas washes off with vegetable oil, water, and palmolive. Watch water at your ankles. It could be raining upriver. El río Guanajibo, el río Mameyes will bathe you when your pipes and faucet parch. When you're parched for days end, have a medalla, a beer. A medalla won't raise your salary or free Puerto Rico, but tonight it'll do. Tonight, listen for the strange music of sirens and chicharras. Tonight, imagine sirens lure to shipwreck away from your archipelago. Tonight, let news of your archipelago watch itself. Instead, watch for Dominicana and the Virgin Islands watching you, just as eager for your hand. Tonight, when the power goes out, give your neighbor a hand, connect them to your generator. Tonight, connect last year's Christmas lights and count all the burnt out bulbs. Tonight, from New Jersey, count the days till you come back home. I have two more poems I'm going to share. This next one is called Ode to the Cacerola Combativa, and it has an epigraph that reads, Me tienen miedo será, me tienen miedo será, by the Cacerola Girl, a figure back in Puerto Rico. Kitchens mourn your betrayal, passers-by fold over their ears. You came to us south-born like the winds, clanging your call over mountain ranges to fire, to frontline, to freedom. You were combative way before you took to devouring streets, feeding peoples off the scrape of your metal, the burnt flakes of urgent ladle and boil. From rooftops and 20-story buildings, innermost wild grasses and tarped homes, you drowned out the evening sirens and warfare press conferences. The dents we dealt you bruised to music, turned steel pan. We played you to arms, not and detriment, you, chosen instrument of insurrection. Riot police marched on cobbled streets and you rang in the realization, nos tienen miedo será. Nos tienen miedo será. And so we shed our own fear. Tear gas hurt nothing like the tear we drummed through days of militancy against the boys' club behind barricades inside the governor's mansion. Your cuts peeled back, scorched leaves, aluminum baby ferns unfurling to early sun. You, so glorious against the flames piled up along streets and storefronts, throbbing in our hands as we wage your transformation into weapon. Fierísima cacerola, let your mangled face be remembered as we fight off the tug to return to this violent place we call normalcy. Thrum through lull, play us, insistent and enraged. And I'll be ending my reading with this poem called Strawberries. I'd always been told strawberries couldn't grow in Puerto Rico. We didn't have the climate. Up here on this finca, past the carcass of Peñuelas' petroleum past, where even the hummingbirds are dizzy with height, small strawberry studs slip off like beads from a necklace on my tongue. The farmer picks them gently from their fuzzy casing, warm and tender from swallowing the world's beatings, as he shows us his budding coffee crop, Crecemos el café bajo sombra. I think of all the work we do in the shadows. Rearing coffee under the sun is hurried and stifles taste. Its flavor should be layered like the rock that makes this mountain of an island. All plants are carbon-husked patience, but coffee is a slow birth, bean of push that can take as long as 4 years to ripen. Intercropped with bananas, papayas, and pyrethrum to lure away pests, allow for just and solidary growth and abundant existence. This steep hill of harvest is everything we're slowly trying to become. The farmer says after the hurricane, they lost the majority of their coffee shrubs. Seeds were swept away with all else. Mass growers strike deals and offer seeds so local farmers can grow to sell back to them. We have to grow our own to be our own. He smiles, splits open a coffee pod, drops the pulpy body in my hand and tells me to try it. I'd always been told freedom would never come for Puerto Rico. We didn't have the climate. I ask the farmer about the strawberries. Son silvestres, he responds, and points to their beautiful excess. Thank you.
Thanks, friends. Hello, distinguished friends. How are we? That's really good news. I'm glad to hear it. So, I can't see you, but I can feel you, okay? Kind of like God. God, is that you? I was really hoping that landed. I'm not sure how it went, but I'm just gonna continue with my poems. Okay. The bug. I couldn't let it drown. I ripped off a piece of my sandwich bag, lifted it to safety. Its little legs reached behind its back to stroke its wings dry. I, too, have stretched my legs in strange positions. Is this a leap? What did you expect? For me to let the bug just be a bug? To leave it alone when it had already planned on dying? To reach out and not imagine myself the God I wish would lift me from the water? Okay, content warning, suicide. I masturbate and pretend God doesn't exist. Charlie the llama, pobre Charlie, was attacked by a Rottweiler while Mom wasn't watching. Back in the day, Mom left Dad in the back with the dog pack while she got the lemonade. The dogs ripped the smallest one limb from limb. Mom says animals are a safe intimacy, but that's because she's the one in control. The dominant one, head of the pack, top dog. Her chihuahua, Peanut, bit and tugged at the back of my pajamas, and she teased me for how little the pack respects me. Charlie recovered from the dog attack. When he was finally able to walk again, my mom brought him inside to tend to his wounds, and he slipped, hit his head on the radiator lighting the wall. He died right there. It's never what you think is going to kill you, except it is. When I die, I'll do it myself. When I was 25, before ever having had sex, I bought a vibrator and penetrated myself first so no one could say they took anything from me. On mercy. No, I didn't delight in the fruit fly's deaths, though anyone who heard me scoff would have thought I did. One version of myself would have let them overrun the kitchen. I've learned to harden my heart. If I'd had let the fruit flies live, I'd have named each one. Consider how small each of their hearts, how much tiny blood, the little distances the blood travels in those small bodies. God of tiny nuisances, who counts each hair on my head. I am God of them now. Stuck to the strip, I know some of them are still alive. I love this poem. Ode to my breasts. I've learned to love my small breasts, to put off the gaze, you know the one. The fat the skin holds tight like the flesh wrapped inside the skin of a plum. Little plum breasts, if I saw you growing on a tree in an orchard of breasts, I would choose you again. In the orchard, each puckering nipple singing its own praise. So I have 2 poems to go, depending on how fast I read. Thank you so much to 92Y and to the judges. Without you, I wouldn't be here. To Ricky and Sophie, to my family for your endless support, to my late rat Marigold, who still gives me strength. Here's my therapy rat. I miss you. Okay. And to all of you for being here today. Also, I'm selling my prints, my art. I'm probably gonna set things up right here. So if you wanna buy things, you can buy things. Please buy things. Okay. So all right, here's my poem. So I do this thing where I write sex poems about my lovers and then I read them to my lovers. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's really wonderful. And this is one of the poems that I read to them and they loved it. So here we are. Nocturne, oh God, I forgot, I think my grandma's watching. It's fine, it's fine. It's all good. Sex is a good thing. Okay. Nocturne on fucking the man you met yesterday. And the epigraph is, it's a human need to give shapelessness a form, Carl Phillips. The outside lamp's golden gaze melds the leaves and both your bodies into a single shadow. You trace his form. He pushes his tongue up the inner crease of your thigh. The fickle figure of leaf and limb shifts as shafts of light trip the splayed shadows over and into its singular self. You know the distance from the door to the bed, each edge of the desk and dresser, but you stay. See your shadows move, gilded black waves. Fuck me like you love me, he says. Love is good, then becomes unspeakable. Knowing this, still, you kiss his shoulder, spread yourself, light dispersed over the top of the water. That was my sex on it. Okay, let's see. Content warning, psychosis, mental health. I arrive at the psychosis center that the therapist who said they couldn't help me didn't tell me was a psychosis center. 1. Always on a Saturday night, the floor is hard beneath me. The men are at my mercy. The music is sweating and smiling in here. In the discoteca, I spin. The wood rises and ripples at my feet. Amen. In the discoteca, you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed. You should be ashamed for calling unclean what God has called clean. Look at me. I'm sexy. Jesus raises his glass. The water rises at my feet and then a cloud of prophecy hovering. In the doorway, the doctor appears, calls me in to test for psychosis. 2. On the waiting room TV, Horton hears a who. He's told he's hearing voices. I saw spirits in my room after dancing salsa. The writing instructor said, it's in your head. When I danced, my skirt orbiting my legs, the spirits heard me. My mother heard and knew things, my great-grandmother too. 3. Halfway into the 10-minute live performance of Sin Etiqueta by Paula F.E.G., the music softens, the voices slow and stretch into smoke. I know worship when I feel it. The Pentecostal praise break, a cloud of light gospels from my body. After, I search the words of worship that are in Spanish, orishas. That night, I dream that shells, and shells pour through the opening in my cup palms. The dream tells me, this is divination, and you have a choice to or not to practice. I start praying to Yamaya instead of Jesus. When the nightmare started and I woke to 2 large orbs spindling in my room, the woman in the writing workshop said they were there to protect me from the nightmares. And the church people, they tell me I'm worshiping demons. And when I dance, I also know that it's a safer kind of intimacy. 4. Do you even get horny? Pastor's wife says, you're tainted for wanting sex. Says, Jezebel. Says, those cultural dances aren't of God. Says, you need a demon cast out. The doctor says, who do you hear? Do you believe you have superpowers? God. Do you hear him? Does God give you superpowers? Who do you hear? What do the voices tell you? Racist. If it's a part of your culture, then it's not psychosis. And then God struck them both dead. 5. The light from the TV hums loudly, hums louder. The light stretches across the waiting room, stretches out the window to my mother's house, through my grandmother's house, her mother's, to Puerto Rico, to escape its endless self, becomes itself faster. Bless the Lord. The therapist sent me to the psychosis center. I must have told her I hear God. My pills keep vigil from my bookshelf. There are so many. I would take them all at once, but my niece is 6 and I braid her hair best. I'm sick or I'm blessed. 6. The spirit and I copa to the discoteca. They tell me to prophesy to raise the doctor and pastor. I shimmied my chest, and the woman's bones claved and came together, but there was no flesh. So I make my leg latigazo, and behold, flesh. The bodies had no breath. So the spirit says, otra vez! So I spin, and water rolls through the floorboards, woke the women, but they had no rhythm. So the spirit tells me to cry, wepa! And the women yell, wepa! Pressed together, skin to skin, hip to hip, winding their waists and stepping in count, light ushering in from behind them like a sedative pushing through the barrel of a syringe. Thank you so much.
Pretty amazing so far, right? I'm Timothy Donnelly, and I'm one of the wheels on the tractor trailer of this historical prize, and it's a real honor to be here tonight to introduce the next 4 readers. Ricky, I loved how you called them classes, the class of 2020. Class of 2021's coming up. Felt very fancy, felt very much like a beautiful Capricorn way to do things, like it's Wimbledon or something. Okay, so the next 4 winning poets were chosen this year by our brilliant, generous, and good-humored judges, Rick Barrett, Patricia Spears-Jones, and Monica de la Torre, and they demonstrate the wide variety of modes of engagement at play in much of our most exciting poetry today, digging deep into the personal and the political, the personal as the political, and even into the politics of personhood. They interrogate and they take a stand, and they do so with an abundance of creativity, reminding us at every turn what it means to think and feel our way ahead, and the great gains of going about it in poetry rather than through some other more ordinary means. Our first reader tonight, Kenzie Allen. Kenzie Allen, born in beautiful West Texas and now residing and teaching in differently beautiful Toronto, is a descendant of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. Allen writes searingly, innovatively, and utterly unforgettably as both a representative survivor and as a clear-eyed reminder of attempted genocide, and likewise as a woman pushing back against the barricades of patriarchy. I'm cuter with my mouth shut, she ironizes. Sexy with 2 black braids, the words sound better when I don't speak them at all, so they tell me. This year's judges beg to differ, Kenzie, and so do I, and I'm sure everyone gathered here will too. Gathered here tonight will too. Excuse me, sorry, blew that. Ina Cariño is a queer Filipinx poet whose first book will be published by Alice James Books in 2023. Its title is Feast, and you may know references to food and to flavor for sustenance, comfort, and a sense of history, community, identity, and sheer pleasure throughout this gorgeous and illuminating poetry, where it guides the psyche through its many-layered and important cultural work, as in Cariño's poem Terrible Bodies, where they write, taste mother, taste father, bitter as herbs from a bastard country. Do not bend, be as Nara heartwood, cold for its burl, be as fissured nib. Ink your terrible body onto paper, that whitest of worlds. Stunning. Okay, Mag Gabbert is next, who currently teaches poetry at Southern Methodist University and writes poems that leap off the page, fueled by a cocktail of pure passion, seemingly tireless philological research, an eye for what shines, a magnetic strength of mind, and some other kind of ongoing lightning flash of chutzpah, heartache, and intricate wordplay, and excavation that comes into being along the way. Hell is an animal with other animals inside it, she writes, and it feels as if she knows whereof she speaks, and she is willing to take us there too. In a fun way. And lastly, but only alphabetically, Alexandra Zukerman's extraordinary Quest series articulates the painful confusion and the grief in life of childhood separation from a father due to imprisonment. These are poems of such care and depth and wisdom and resolve. Reading them, you find yourself moved to such extents of tenderness, you don't only want to reread them, you want to befriend them somehow as they push through their magical thinking. He says the future is before his eyes, she writes in Quest 4. So we bring him the weathers, shape-shifting beings who stand between the days, who leave as quickly as they come, the weathers we keep in our minds, which can't be checked. Originally from New York, Zukerman currently resides in the great state of Maine. And did I mention hope? These poems are filled with it. Truly, lastly, last year's runners-up, also all totally extraordinary, were Walter Ancaro, Hannah Loeb, Deshaun Washington, and Jinjin Zhu. I hope we see your work again next year. Iambic pentameter. Let's hear it. God bless.
Yowanko, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you. And Yowanko, thank you for being here. Sigili swagwek, Kenzie ni yukyats, yagot lunodad ni yukyats, unkwe huwa ni wak nyata ni wagidaloda, skanagoka. Hello, my name is Kenzie. My Oneida name means she plays music as she goes along. I am Oneida of the tribe of Wisconsin, Oneida Nation of Wisconsin descendant. And I am Turtle Clan, and I ask, are you with peace? Which is referring to our great law of peace, and is sometimes a hard question to answer. So I also ask, how is it going along, Yoyanladi? So this is a poem called Oskanudu, which is the word for deer, but I've also heard it called the peaceful one. For a few more moments, it is ours. You are not that kind of wolf who would devour the world. I no longer return to the forest alone. I look for myself in every lake mirror, suspended in briar, the tilted back throat and howl. In the overgrown, river dappled, I don't know what it looks like. Peace, I say, except for the outline of where it's been. I feed her peaches. She licks my fingers almost clean. Velveteen of newly grown, the strawberry trail into cinder cone I made my haunt, a thicket, clover charmed. Soft, supple meat. We never can go back to listen for the soundless. My stomach, ripe for arrow and so unsettled. Let me become it, quivered, skin fit to leave my bones, past, gaze tied to the hunter, headlights, this body I can't bear into exile, that time of year our antlers shed. And no? All right. That's fine. Okay, so this is a lipogram, which is a type of poem that limits the letters that you use. So you might have a whole poem that doesn't ever use words with the letter E in it. In this case, I am limiting this poem to the 13 letters that are shared between English and the Latinized version of Oneida. So this is, even the word Oneida can't be written in Oneida. What ails the nation's lies unseats the sustenant. At least it tilts halos, allies loss, attunes statues to skeletal white noon, an oilskin title, a tessellate ease. I salute, I the tithe, I the hesitant, no, saint, no, unholy, I in the nun's salon. Thus they anoint the unhostile entity, the we who talk less, sweat less, listen, heat less, sans teeth. All alleles, all eons, all heathen shell unsown, shakes whole a lethal sienna, a toll to hasten want. An unlikely whetstone, this state without yoke, outhunts its own lie, lawless skyline in awe, at the likeness, the kiln, the hush, how it shines. This is love song for our own demise. In the great die-off, the fireflies will become fewer still, the jar empty. A cardinal returned each summer, vanished. Save any space you can. The hum of June buffets the doors not so long before we mourn. I shudder to think of the bear trap shattering bone, his tender paw gripped in a mouth he should never encounter, or the gills cut through clear with filament, sharp as invisible, lipless fauna surrounded by fire on every shoreline. We've seen so many feathered stomachs filled up with ash. Beyond doubt, no air is left, yet the breath leaves. Only the lights on the sidewalk tell you anything is left open to be left. There was a garden, something to pray for, even at the wake. I want to say it was enough. The flame hailing from the sill in candle, holy water, paper stars. That's the tongue of this house laid bare, wide and beckons welcome. I have prepared the linens. I have kissed a prayer to each crevice, like cupped hands, a flower pressed brief and capsized by mid-afternoon, bad deeds done by strange fingers, as though you don't know where you've been. And thank you so much again, Yowanko, for being here. This is Quiet as Thunderbolts. And I kept it from you like a kill, my name, my legacy, my shoulder chip, and the small hollow beneath where I can be wounded. The longhouse I whittled to matchsticks, abalone filling up with hair ties, Ute painted coffee mugs and iron turtles, a pan flash of identity, an almond eye watching from between the white bookcases and photographs of cities, orchards, graves. A lonely ironing board left to the street outside our old place. Candles I lit in churches for all the women I have loved. Animals who are no longer with us. Animals who are no longer ours. So much landscape I can't tend to, wide as a child's face and crumbled in drought, rimmed in salt. I kept the water lily, how Bear Clan was given the medicines, name giver, and how she made me darker with her words. The turquoise ring, and how it pleases the spirits to give that which has been so admired. The sweet grass in my sock drawer, the exact volume of air I can fit in my lungs and belly as I try to swallow and breathe its sweetness. Every bead, every loop of every treasure necklace. I kept porcupine quills in my throat. I let the water drown me every night in my river bottom canoe. I've been sleepwalking since I got to this earth, since they brought up the soil and made an island, those who did not perish in the dive. Since the island crawled into a continent, I've been shell and memory, calendar and hearth.
I'm short. Thank you for being here, everybody. I'm so happy to be around poets again. Lean economy. I pop tins of the greasiest luncheon meat open, slather my chin with animal salt, asymmetrical to the story of that soldier whose pinky fingers were cut off in the war. Want versus want. Real love is when you loot a crate of lard-filled cans, throw it into the Pacific to feed your ancestors. In this oily paradigm, we learn to glut ourselves on marrow. They say it's a shame I subsist on scraps. Where do you shop for food? Show me someone who won't argue that there's nothing sentimental in this world, as if bastard histories don't crave undoing. In exchange, I'll show you how to nourish yourself. Lift your grandmother's knife, slice through the fattest layer in your gut, and eat. This next poem is called Bitter Melon, and if you've ever eaten a bitter melon or a bitter gourd, you'll know it's extremely bitter. My grandmother used to force feed this to me when I was little. Anyway, bitter melon. Balsam pear, wrinkled gourd, leafy thing raised from seed. Pungent goya, ampalaya, cut and salt at the sink. Spoon pulp from bumpy rind, brown half-moons in garlic and sparking mantika. Like your nanay did, like your lola did, like your manang braving hat parshak, you'll wince. You'll think of the taste of your own green body, mapait ang lasa. Your sneer, masakit dugut laman, it hurts, this smack of bitter. Yes, you'll remember how much it hurts to nick your thumb as you bloom heat in acid, sili at sukang puti, to grow up glowering in half-light, to flesh out and plod through your own grassy way, unfurl your own crush of vines. After you tip it onto a mound of steamed rice, as you chew, the barb of it will hit the back of your throat. Look at yourself, square. You used to snarl at moths, start small blazes in entryways. Wood chip fires, flicking paint. Look, tingnan mo. See your lip curling in the glint of your bowl. Unruly squash, acrid vegetable, you'll flinch. You'll want to see nothing, taste like nothing. But when you disappear your meal, when you choke on the last chunky morsel of rice, you'll slurp, thirsty for more. A saccharine life. Huwag mo akong kalimutan, you'll plead. Taste me, taste me. This next poem is a prose poem, and it came about because I was thinking about genealogy and how it's not really accessible, those DNA websites, right, to a lot of people, people of color from different countries. I'm gonna take this off. Yeah, so this is a prose poem. It's called Ancestors for Sale. In the wet market stalls, a dream monger yells, ancestors for sale, ancestors for sale. Waking life is cloudy on a mountain, he chants, but don't fear your own breath. I lower my head, try to shove past with my basket of vegetables, ruddy kamatis, pale sayote moons, hesitate as grandmother's face flashes in the clink and sheen of 100 dangling mirrors, portals for the dead, perhaps made for breaking. Come. He plies me with hot kape, palms me balikutsa spun from cane molasses, curled and dried under sun. So I sit on a high wooden stool, face the market, suck on crumbling sugar, glug it down with endless bitter. In my ear he whispers, repeat after me, I was born in mud. I am the oldest song, rivers will always writhe indigo in these hills. And I inhale deep, bellow in time to the dawn palenque's bustle. Milkfish slop in metal pails. I was born in mud. Gnats buzzing star apples strung on ropes. I am the oldest song. Hawkers rasping their wares through cigarette smoke. Yes, rivers will always writhe indigo in these hills. And for a moment, I don't fear my own breath. I sigh, turn, see grandmother in a mirror. Fog whispers out in clouds. I can barely see past my nose. I point to the glass, ask, how much? Nothing. You owe me nothing. And when my breath clears, there is only my reflection, edges blurred. I huff at him. When I wake, where will I find my ancestors but in their dirty graves? He pulls down the mirror, crushes it under his heel, proclaims, never wake, never barter for your ancestors in this market where dreammongers play. I have 2 more poems. I dream in a tongue other than my own. 1 minute I'm Tweety smack and the next I'm banjo twang. Yes, 1 minute I'm angle whip and the next I'm alighting endings with beginnings, mouthing vowels so flat my mongrel self sounds almost real. But I dream in a different dialect, sift my mother's stout syllables, plump honorifics from the language of my colonizers. What is left, glossy contractions, shiny subjunctive, grammar that belongs to the anthropology of the pale. People who look nothing like me, my lips inflamed form these words, my cheeks lined with a hook and barb of prepositions for proper. We, creatures broken, domesticated, blistered maw muzzled, my brown body a vessel, torched, suffused with the idioms of my invaders, white bodies with their alien speech who are alarmed by the rolling, smacking, slapping of tongues on crooked teeth, my crew in a fire, my throat a chimney, my tongue as white as a flag burning, burning, my tongue is burning, my tongue is burning, is. This last poem is called Rice. It's for my Lola, my grandmother. Unhatched songs, quiet, perfumed white, dirt-born pips cooking on the stovetop. I listen in half light, breathe still, tilt my ear as memories of Lola float up with a milk scent. Over her shallow basket, she'd clean the rice, pick tan shell from ivory kernel, say, in America, with a husk like that, you could scuff at the lightest skin, the palest fear. Daily she fed me sweet muck of thick soy, gingered meat, hot mounds of rice. I still wonder how a grain too small for a wish holds the task of feeding in its shell. I left Lola on her cement step, her chipped plates, those women stooped and bronzing in paddies. And I try not to confuse the smell of soggy hulls with the damp musk of an American dream. Still, I wait for the water to bubble in the pot, and soon, in this half-light, they'll bud up soft, be what they'll be. And when it's time to grow up into this white, white world, give me a brown husk like that. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. I, too, am short. So I'm going to read 4 poems for you guys. The first 3 are like bitter love poems, and the last one is like a sweet love poem. So the first poem is called America. What does it mean to be in love with Theodore Roosevelt? To lust for another man wearing loose-fitted khaki, hat folded and tilted at the brim, who owns a horse, unsurprisingly named Texas, talks about how much he loved shooting another man and says he doubled up neatly as a jackrabbit, and whose own men said they would have gone to hell with him, knowing that I have also killed a few things, insects mostly, a squirrel once with my car at 16, later a field mouse and a possum. While driving across Texas, like Teddy, I have always eaten meat, though I can only stomach fishing. And even then, I think of the sound, thrashing, inside the red and white cooler, how it must feel. So now I'm going to read the hell poem. It's called Goat. Because every man I've ever slept with has wandered off to have kids, but later fucked me again. Because I can't seem to pick a religion. Because during sex ed, my teacher showed us a little box with an open slot on her desk, told us to write down our questions and slip them in. Because the first note read, "Does sex really make women scream?" Because the ancient Greek word tragoidia, which meant goat song, somehow turned into the modern English tragedy. Because my dad's nickname for me is Smelly. Because for a long time I heard bleat as bleed. Because this song is sweet. It is sweet. Because God told his people to bring him 2 goats. He said they should give one their sins and let it go, and they should slit the other's throat. Because my brother claims he needs a new razor for manscaping. Because childless mothers are called nannies. Because Jesus won't help me. And one night, when a friend and I were 15, we took a late train to a faraway party, and a man approached us, whispering, "Would you rather be stabbed or sliced?" Because hell is an animal with other animals inside it. Because every choice I've made involved sacrifice. Because I'm always the one that got away. This poem is called Constellation. It looks like a little constellation. Sometimes people write poems about fire that are really about lovemaking. And sometimes people get sunburned while swimming because they think they should have felt the heat. As a kid, I liked to press my hand against sheets of paper and trace my fingers to draw little stars. It's true that I call you an old flame, even though I still reach across the dark. At night, when you turned on my street, I could see the lit trail of your cigarette sparks. You would say, "Let's just see where things lead." And my body would become a satellite or stream, the way the sun beams off the face of the moon as they rotate apart. One time I curved my hands together in arcs, and you held up your fist, saying, "No, this is the heart." This is my last poem. It's nicer. It's called Orangutan. It's New Year's Eve, and my life is predictable. I've been to Europe a couple times, done some sightseeing, castles mainly. I have eaten grilled cheese sandwiches and chips flavored with sour cream, watched vampire movies, and one time I did go camping in a teepee with my best friend after watching the sun rise out of the blue that morning. Later on, we took a bath in a clawfoot tub, facing opposite ways, nervously laughing every time our damp skin grazed the other, and we would say, "You're not real, not real, not real." Which I guess was surprising and kind of celebratory, like a sudden orangutan, too big to shield himself with an umbrella of leaves, very Susie and Muppety, and even extraterrestrial or cerebral up there in the trees. Thank you.
Thank you to the 92nd Street Y. It's such an honor to be among this cohort of brilliant poets. Quest 1. To us children, the small hotel garden was replete with effects, but not causes. Overhead, petals falling, or the perfect spacing of leaves. By definition, magic. If we bury a coconut, it will turn into a tree. So when our family vacation ended, our child's minds reasoned, if we bury our key in the hotel's small garden, then our family will return again and again. So we buried our key, not knowing we had wills, and pressed our noses to the exhibition glass of our souls. When we bring our father to prison, guards go through his things. Some they reject, others, a handful of items will be his personal effects for years. What is prison but a cause? As we watch our father fumble through a pair of glasses and a black sneaker, which the guard rejects, we know we have wills. We are adults now. We don't bury our keys, but we bury our keys. We know we have wills. Quest 2. They take you from the parking lot to the visiting room, shoe prints do, painted to the ground. They gaslight you, as if in prison we are free to follow or not follow the correct path. We pass buildings which are unmarked. The walls hold prisoners. We must be passing even now, stick insects, seahorses, stealthy owls, the camouflaged animals. From the shoe print path, we are not to make eye contact. Only the guards are permitted to sight them. But we look, we see a moth, maybe our father. Quest 3. Diderot said the blind carry through time their first touches. When the sightless mathematician felt his lover's face for the 1,000th time, it was the first time. He remembered the feel as though it were made of clay. The more pleasure he would have in this memory, Diderot writes, the less regret he would have. The mathematician taught himself to read, feeling tombstones with his fingers. They must have signified life to him. Our father is not blind, prison is a graveyard, their faces age. Our father was a non-native in an adult world like we were, still making our home in it. He is a native now. He points to planes on their diurnal path over prison. He points to each one. He says, that is Air France. That is Alitalia. Quest 4. We find our father so far inside that on visiting days, we are tiny suns sharpening on the horizon. He has gone to meet the fear that he will die in prison. When we visit, the long, unspeakable shadows lengthen even more. There is no atmosphere on that rock, no air, only black space at his fingertips. He sees the truth plain, the true day. He says the future is before his eyes. So we bring him the weathers, shape-shifting beings who stand between the days, who leave as quickly as they come. The weathers we keep in our minds which can't be checked. Only quarters and ID cards permitted in plastic bags. Today we have brought one we know from the beach. Cooling sand, the hour when the day's activities are cast into memory. The ceremony of the kiss is a staid passage, after which he'll see the eyes of the day. Two more. Quest 6. My son came into the world a sealed, clean envelope. They weighed him on my chest, wind whipped through his cords, his eyes peeled like slivers of abandon. I am the postwoman of this envelope. I must protect the original message. Everyone sanitizes their seats with Clorox wipes and Purells like bees. The prison will close to visitors soon, we hope and fear. Our father has all the underlying conditions. This is the treacherous past which could harm them both. I hold the envelope close. Everyone contains the same original message. My baby tugs on my father's face like Indiana Jones. Quest 7. We stored our father in the past tense, where he could be found again. Life before prison. That is where we waited for him at the stolid lip of the earth. But the netherworld present has suddenly grown urgent. The air there is toxic, prisoners are dying. We open the epic, our father is alive. He is deprived of light, soil is his sustenance, and clay his food. He is clad like birds in coats of feathers. He is worn again, but by choice, like the shirt we were held to as children. The warden moves in like a crack in the cuneiform. This would happen, calls interrupted by warnings, emails read. They detain them while a virus lays claim to their quarters. In this, our father is a friend made for Gilgamesh, whose death is a lacuna. He would have continued his trembling vision. He would have died. Thank you.